Congratulations are in order for the Seattle Seahawks and their entire organization on winning Super Bowl 48. It's been a long time coming for the Seahawks, that's for sure. You're talking about a team that's been in existence almost 40 years and now finally has won their first Lombardi trophy. Major props to everybody involved in that organization, from owner Paul Allen on down to general manager John Schneider, to head coach Pete Carroll, to Russell Wilson and Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor and Marshawn Lynch and everybody involved with that Seattle Seahawks organization. You guys deserved it. One of the most difficult things I feel to do in professional sports is to have a lot of expectations heading into a season and then actually live up to those expectations, if not exceed them. The Seattle Seahawks were prohibitive favorites in most people's minds to get to the Super Bowl, and the pick of a lot of people before the season, myself included, to actually win Super Bowl 48. And when you have those type of expectations, it can become quite daunting. You could become overwhelmed by them, and you could be burdened by them. But the Seahawks never were. They welcomed that challenge, and they welcomed the opportunity to live up to those expectations. And I think that's a direct reflection of head coach Pete Carroll. He's a very energetic guy, very rah-rah type of college head coach, which is why he was so successful at USC, among other things. The one thing I think that Pete Carroll does so well is he keeps his teams relaxed and they have fun. You could be successful and have a lot of fun. You don't always have to be such a tight ass about everything. And Pete Carroll definitely has a lot of fun himself. And so do his players. And it shows. He allows them to be themselves. He allows them to be characters and be personalities, both on and off the field. And I think that's a tremendous thing. And that's why his teams, traditionally over the years, going back to USC and now here in Seattle, play so well in big games because they're loose. They don't get tight. They don't feel a lot of pressure. It allows them to execute more easily than a lot of other teams. When you look at the Seahawks throughout the course of the season, you got a lot of talk about the 12th man and everything else. And they have a tremendous fan base, and that stadium is popping on Sundays when the Seahawks are playing there. There's no question about that. But they didn't have that aura of invincibility there by the end of the season. They almost lost to Tampa Bay there. They did lose to Arizona there. And San Francisco came about this close from beating them there in the NFC Championship game. So, I always laugh when I hear it. It sounds so great when the media talks about it. It makes fans really feel good about themselves. And it's not to indicate, in my opinion, that the fans don't have an impact, because they can and they do. But ultimately, it's about the players and it's about the coaches and it's about the organizations. And that's why teams win world championships. And that's why the Seattle Seahawks won Super Bowl 48 and now appear to be positioned to potentially become the next dynasty in the NFL. Now, when you look at the way the Super Bowl broke down, I knew going into it that the Seahawks were going to win. I didn't think they were going to dominate in that fashion. I should have, but I didn't. I was trying to maybe show too much respect for the Denver Broncos. But when you saw the Seattle Seahawks and you saw the Denver Broncos, the matchups were terrible for the Broncos. The matchups were beautiful for the Seahawks. But you just saw just how much better that Seahawks 53-man roster was all around compared to the Denver Broncos. They dominated them and kicked their ass in every single aspect of the game you possibly can. They took one of the all-time great quarterbacks in Peyton Manning, a guy who had a record-setting season, threw for more yards and touchdown passes than any quarterback in NFL history, with an offense that scored more touchdowns and more points than any team in NFL history in a single season. And they demolished them. They dismantled them. They destroyed them. They made them their bitches. They had Peyton Manning and that entire offense and that entire Broncos team overwhelmed, intimidated, and flat out scared, period. It was impressive to watch. And in my opinion, and this is even being a Bear fan, and this is even being somebody that tends to view the past as being better than the present or the future, to me, the Seahawks' performance in Super Bowl 48 is the single most impressive performance by an entire team in Super Bowl history. Yes, more impressive than the Bears versus the Patriots in Super Bowl 20. The Patriots, in theory, weren't even the best team in the AFC that year. That was the Miami Dolphins. The Patriots were like a wild card team. So, of course, they were going to get dismantled by the Bears. And then you might say, well, what about 49ers and Broncos in Super Bowl 24? Well, John Elway's Broncos had already lost 2 Super Bowls in that decade, and they were not nearly as good of an offensive unit as Peyton Manning's Denver Broncos. This was a historic offense that put up 8 points in the Super Bowl. Give me a frickin' break here. So to me, a more impressive total all-around team performance. And when you look at why the Seahawks won Super Bowl 48, you could talk about the total dominance, but it comes down to what they did at an organizational level. You know, Paul Allen taking over and really helping to change the image of the Seahawks and using his wealth to change the infrastructure of the Seahawks, getting them out of the kingdom, but more importantly, bringing in football people to run the football side of the business. Paul Allen being a smart enough man to understand what he knows, which is business, and what he doesn't know, which is football. And unlike idiots like Daniel Snyder and Jerry Jones, he allows the football people to do the football things so that way he can sit back and look good as an owner. And that's what a good owner does. John Schneider and Pete Carroll obviously have some type of really good rapport, and they really understand what makes a good Seattle Seahawk. What I'm trying to say is what type of people they want to bring into the fold. And when you look at the Seahawks over the past several years when it comes to the NFL draft, you look at every year and it seems like they're finding some big steal in the middle rounds. Cam Chancellor in 2010 was a 5th-round pick. Richard Sherman the next year was a 5th-round pick. The year after that, they got their franchise quarterback in Russell Wilson in the 3rd round. Your Super Bowl MVP was Malcolm Smith, a 7th-round pick. Bobby Wagner, your starting middle linebacker, was a 2nd-round pick. Byron Maxwell, who ended up starting opposite Richard Sherman, I believe, was like a 5th or 6th-round pick. I mean, it just goes all around. You have guys like on the offensive side, like Doug Baldwin and Jermaine Kearson were undrafted free agents. Golden Tate was a 2nd-round pick. Marshawn Lynch, they used those draft picks as currency when they needed to, and they got him for a 4th and 5th-round pick. That's a tremendous job. And then when you hit in the 1st round on guys like Russell Okung and guys especially like Earl Thomas, man, you look at the Seahawks, 9 of their 11 starters on defense were drafted by the team. 15 of their 22 total starters were drafted by the team. In today's NFL, in today's era of the salary cap and free agency, if you have any real delusions or thoughts or visions or dreams of being a consistent Super Bowl contender and winning potentially a Super Bowl championship, if not more than one, you must draft well, period. You must draft your own quarterback, and then you must draft that team around him. No doubt about it. And you saw that in the Super Bowl. You know, the Broncos didn't draft quite as well as the Seattle Seahawks. Instead of drafting their quarterback, they went into free agency to get theirs. Yes, Peyton Manning's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, but how many quarterbacks in recent history have been free agent signings that have come in and won Super Bowls for their teams? You know, don't bring up the guys like the Brad Johnsons and the Trent Dilfers. I mean, those are 2 of the more recent ones, along with Drew Brees for the 2009 New Orleans Saints. The bottom line is that the teams that have the most success consistently are the ones that draft their franchise quarterbacks and then build the team around them. It's the way it goes. Because now when you look at the Seahawks heading into this offseason, you know, they have some questions and they have some things they're going to have to address, you know, and they're going to have to do some maneuvering with the salary cap, and they're going to have to figure out what guys they're going to take care of and which guys they're going to have to move on from and potentially replace. But they're in a good position to do that. You know, they brought in Michael Bennett on a 1-year prove-it deal, and he had a very good season. And he was one of the key factors in that Super Bowl victory because with him and Cliff Averill, you know, you were able to generate consistent pass rush with your front 4. You know, that was the ultimate difference in that game. You know, are they going to re-sign Michael Bennett or are they not? They might not. You know, you look at him, Richard Sherman's going to be eligible for a new contract. You've already taken care of guys like Cam Chancellor. You're going to have to take care of Richard Sherman. But you're going to find a way to do that. You have Golden Tate as a free agent. Are you going to bring him back or not? You have guys like Zach Miller who carry a huge cap number. You could probably let him go. Somebody like Chris Clemens, Sidney Rice. So you have the ability to get rid of some guys, clear out some cap space, and re-sign some of these guys. And the biggest, most important thing for the Seahawks organization that will allow them to do that and allow them to stem the tide and allow themselves to keep their team primarily intact for the 2014 season, the way it looks to me, in my opinion, is the fact that they drafted their franchise quarterback, Russell Wilson, in the 3rd round. They drafted their guy, and now they can wait at least until the end of next season before they even have to entertain the thought of giving Russell Wilson a big-time $15 to $20 million a year contract extension. That's the luxury and a benefit that you afford yourself as an organization when you know what the hell you're doing and you draft somebody like Russell Wilson in the third round. You've now won a Super Bowl in his second season based off of the CBA agreement. You don't have to even entertain giving him a new contract until after his third season. So you could take care of some of these other pieces and move some cap money around and then worry about Russell Wilson after the 2014 season. That's the luxury that good teams afford themselves. And if they want to sit there and they let somebody here go or they let somebody there go, the Seahawks, more than most teams, have an understanding of how to make the middle and late rounds of the draft work for them. And they have an understanding of how to find those guys that fit what they want to do and fit that kind of Seahawk image. I would be entirely stunned if the Seahawks aren't Super Bowl contenders next year. I'd be entirely stunned at this moment, the way things sit, to not see the Seattle Seahawks make it back to the Super Bowl. And I'd frankly be stunned to not see the Seattle Seahawks win Super Bowl 49. They are the most complete and talented 53-man roster in the National Football League. I expect them to stay that way the next year. Now they have the confidence of having won the Super Bowl before, knowing they can do it again. Pete Carroll's loosey-goosey style, I think, will help this team stay relaxed and stay loose. You've got another year of growth for Russell Wilson. So not only do you not have to pay Russell Wilson yet, he's only, 25 years old? He hasn't even hit his peak yet. He's only going to get better. He's only going to become a more important, an integral part of that offense. And not to mention the fact that one of their big offseason acquisitions was Percy Harvin, who barely was around this year. He made an impact in the Super Bowl. He hopefully will have him for an entire season. So it's kind of like Percy Harvin almost in a way had a redshirt year if you really look at it for the Seattle Seahawks. This Seahawks roster is deep. They're loaded. They're talented. They've got a great leader and a great franchise quarterback. They've got all pro and Pro Bowl caliber players all over, especially on the defensive side of the football. The Seattle Seahawks organization looks primed and positioned to become the next great NFL dynasty. We'll ultimately see if it happens. But once again, congratulations to the Seattle Seahawks, that entire organization, their fans, for becoming Super Bowl 48 champions. You guys deserve it. Hopefully this makes up for Super Bowl 40. I hope it does for you. It's got to feel good to get that monkey off the back. But you might be celebrating another one next year.